Okay, let's get started. Today I will take, yeah, anybody has any questions on previous sessions? No? Okay. Okay, so today we'll learn about important concept in any programming language, including Java, which is conditional statements. Okay. So conditional statements are frequently used in any programming language because if you want to do some operation conditionally, not just by default, but conditionally, you must use conditional statements. And the most frequently used conditional statements in Java are if condition, if else condition, and if you have more conditions, then if else, and this will continue. Like you can put as many conditions as you want. And if you have multiple nested conditions or multiple if conditions, then you can use switch case. We will use this also later. So first we will see a simple if condition. Okay, so by means of an example, I will illustrate this concept. For example, if you want to write a simple method in Java that would return a minimum out of two numbers, minimum value out of two given numbers, how would you write it? Okay, this is a very simple example. And the reason I'm taking the reusable function is once we write the reusable function, we can call it as many times as we want in the main function. So otherwise, if you write this once in main, you cannot parameterize this. You cannot uh, Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how long were you not able to hear me? Is it too long or just 2 or 3 minutes? Okay, I'm sharing the screen now. Again. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I was like introducing you about conditional statements, and there are a couple of conditional statements in Java using which we can write some condition. We can perform some operation using the condition, not just by default. So there are if condition, if else condition, if else condition, and nested if conditions and multiple conditions, and there are switch cases, right? So we will see these concepts example wise. So I'll illustrate these concepts by means of some examples. Okay, so let's open the project again. Right. Okay. So the every time I teach a concept, I would create reusable functions in library, right? And then I will call these functions in the test. Okay, so that's a uh, uh, like framework. You can think of it as a framework. So instead of directly creating this thing, the program inside a test, that means inside the main function, we will create a function, reusable function library, and call this, so that if you want to pass different values, we can do so. We can call these functions as many times as we want. All right. So let's create a library function. So as usual, you already know this. Right click on the package and create a class. Okay. So let's call this, just for the sake of simplicity, I would call this conditional demo. Okay. So demo means it's class containing all reusable functions like library. So obviously I don't include the main function, right? Okay, finish. Okay. So let's create simple example I would take, that is how to choose a minimum of 2 values. Okay, so let it build 100%. So we will write it until. So how do you create a reusable function? As usual, using a access modifier public. All right. Then if you don't have any return value, you can just put a void. Okay, so we can change it to some other. So public void and function name. Okay, if it is static, you can put static, but let's not use static in the beginning. Okay. So I want to write a minimum function. So my function name is minimum. So my minimum function must choose a minimum out of 2 numbers, integers or double or long. So obviously I have to accept minimum 2 numbers. So beginning with integer, I will just enter a, integer b. Okay, so that's my, this is called function signature. So it has access modifier, return type, function name, and arguments list. Okay, so that's overall it's called signature of the function. Now I am going to define it inside the curly brackets. Okay, so these are the flower brackets or curly brackets. Your definition must lie in here. Okay. Okay, now I have to write the logic. So we are going to learn about what if condition. So let's just use if condition and see if and followed by some condition. That's a syntax. So you write the condition over here. If followed by condition. Okay. So let's write. Okay, that's not the one. So my condition is if A is less than B. Okay. A is less than B. Then I want to print something to the console, which is the minimum of A and B. So you already know sysout is a shortcut for system.println, and I'll print it very descriptively. The minimum of, okay, so you have to use a plus operator, which is concatenation operator, minimum of A plus B plus is, hold on, you can put plus A. Okay, so this statement will be printed to the console. Why the minimum of A and B is A? Because if A is less than B, then only this statement will be executed, right? So obviously when A is less than B, you can print A is the minimum. Okay, so now you can put one more condition. So if B is less than A, then B is the minimum, obviously. So I'll just reverse it, simple reverse. Okay, so I am just using if condition just for the beginnings purpose, just for learning purpose. Okay. So I'll just copy this. So in this case, the minimum of A and B would be B, because you already put a condition B is less than E. Okay, so simple as that. Now let's run it. Now how would I run it? Anybody? How can I run this program? Yes. Yeah, anybody can speak. I don't have to call you again, right?
One else.
How can I run this program? Simple. I have already showed you numerous times, right?
We have to call the
We
function.
have to call the main
Correct.
function.
Exactly. We have to call this function in a main class. Now this main function. Now this class doesn't have main because I deliberately did not put it, because libraries are supposed to have library functions, reusable functions. So as I told you before, in the test package, I will create one more class just for calling, executing. So new class. I would call, just for the simplicity purposes, I call this as conditional test. Right, and this should have main function because I'm going to execute something. So, or you can write it. If you don't check it, you have to write it. So I'll just check it. Okay, so now one of you will actually tell me how can I call it, because we have already called so many functions, right? So now you can easily call a function. So okay, now one more time. Conditional demo class has a function called minimum. Now I want to call this minimum function in the another class called conditional test. Okay, so now tell me how can I call that? How can I call it? What did we use to call it? What is the process of calling a function in another class? Huh? Anyone? Don't text me. Just tell. Okay. What is it? Speak out. It's a simple concept, right? The process is called instantiation, right? I have to create an instance of this class in which I have defined a function. Okay. So what is the instantiation? Creating a copy of this class, right? Creating an object. Okay, so listen again. Okay, so this is a very basic concept. I don't have to tell again and again, right? Conditional demo as a function. Now I want to call this function belonging to conditional demo in conditional test class. Okay, so conditional test class must have a copy of conditional demo. So how can I create a copy? By creating an instance of or object of conditional demo. How would I do it? Simple. Conditional demo class name, right? And cd, let's call it, that's an object instance. You can have any name here, it doesn't matter. I'm just putting a short form cd for conditional demo. All right, equals new. New is a keyword that would create new instance, new object every time. Okay, new copy, in other words. And then again class name conditional demo followed by two parentheses. That would indicate it's a constructor. So, but don't worry, this is the syntax of creating an instance. Okay, so now you have to import this, because without importing you cannot access the functions inside it. So it will show import statement and it will add import here, right here. See. Okay, so everybody got this. What I am trying to do here is instantiation. Why instantiation? To access methods in the class. Okay, so now one of you are going to tell me how can I access the function. Now we have created instance of the conditional demo class, which is cd, right? Now conditional demo has a function minimum. Now I want to call this. Okay, now tell me, how can I call it? Calling. Okay, how can I call it? Oh, are you able to hear me? Or you lost? Okay, good. Okay.
Can you make the class Disciple class, condition demo and condition test?
Say what?
I mean, can you put the two classes side by side, like so that I can see both classes, the condition demo and conditional test.
Okay, so this is right here, side by side. So
Side
if
by side, I can see both screen.
Oh, you want to see both screens? No, not required. Why you want to see?
No,
I can
if
do that.
that will be easier to, yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what you write in these classes and main method.
See, right here, library has conditional demo. Okay.
Yes, okay.
And test has conditional test right here. But
Okay.
I got you. You want to see both conditional demo code and conditional test code side by side, visible. Correct?
That's okay.
Let's try this. It can be done, but yeah, so it will actually
Yeah, it is okay.
cascade
Up and down. It's okay, yeah.
If it is helpful for you, okay, so that's fine. But okay, tell me the answer. Since I have done what you wanted, okay, tell me, how can I call this? Now this will make your visibility easier, right? Now you have conditional demo. function. I want to call this function here, right here, where my cursor.
Then maintain.
Okay, now tell me. Okay, go on again.
Minimum dot.
Minimum dot. Okay, wrong answer.
It's a CD dot minimum
CD
function.
dot. That's correct answer. CD dot.
Yes, extremely sorry. Yeah, the object should be yes. CD dot.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why I created an
I'm wrong.
object. Right? Otherwise, there is
I
no
need to put
purpose
the
of
two
created
values.
an object and object dot function. You're
Minimum,
telling the other
yeah,
way around.
correct.
So minimum dot is wrong answer. CD dot is
No, I
object dot
understand.
minimum.
I should
Okay,
write
now
that.
yeah, now what you have to do? It is asking you to enter A and B. So now tell me any numbers which are integers.
Like 5 or 2.
5 and 2. Okay, good. Okay, so now that's it. We have called and passed the arguments value. So these arguments must be passed at the time of calling. Exact values. Okay, so real values, not just like variables you have to pass. Okay, now I want to run this. Okay, so let's run this by right clicking. Which one? I want to run the test, not the demo, because test is the main function. So run as and Java application. Simple. Every time same thing. Basics. Okay, so now console says the minimum of 5 and 2 is 2, which is correct. Okay, 5 and 2 is 2. So that means our function is working. So now we have just used if condition. Now let's try to use if and else condition. Okay, if else condition. Okay, now I'll slightly modify this function. Okay, now if I say if A is less than B, then A is the minimum of A and B. Now again I don't have to repeat if B is less than A. Okay, so instead Java provides another keyword called else. Okay, this means whatever is the opposite of this condition, okay, that is covered here. So obviously when A is less than B, else part would be B is less than C, B is less than A. So this will be the standard nomenclature, standard syntax. It wouldn't change the value. It wouldn't change the value even if I run the same program, the same value. So let's try and run. Okay, so minimum of 5 and 2 is 2. So the else part is successful. Okay, so in case you are still doubtful, let's reverse this. So first let's take the smaller number, then let's take the bigger number. So first I will take 4 and let's take 10. Okay, so in this case also it should work. 4. Okay, minimum 4 and 10 is 4. So irrespective of the values you put in, it will result in the same output. So the standard is if and else. All right. Okay, so now let's write the simple function to choose the maximum. Okay, simple as it. Now you can actually write it. Okay, I'm going to close this. Okay, so now main logic lies in the reusable function, the library, not in the calling. Calling anybody can call, right? Okay, so now let's put a comment properly here. So this is a function to calculate minimum of 2 numbers. Okay, so now let's write a function to calculate max of 2 numbers. Okay, so somebody help me here. Okay, anybody tell me? You can just tell me the same thing wherever the modifications are needed. Just tell me those. Okay, go on. Click. Okay, are you able to hear me again? Are you lost? Okay, I think you're okay. Tell me again.
Void maximum.
Right, void maximum. Then
Integer A, integer. I mean integer P.
P. Yeah, same thing. That's why I'm asking you. It's not very difficult. Okay, then tell me the condition.
If A greater than B.
Correct. A is greater than B.
Yes, whatever the syntax.
Sys out. Now you can read the whole bunch. Okay, let's just copy paste here. Okay, because without wasting time, you know that sys out. You can print whatever. So instead of minimum, I want to find out the maximum. So if A is greater than B, the maximum of A and B would be what?
A.
A. So that's correct. Now tell me the other part. What happens the other way around? Same thing. Just read here and tell me. Nothing is else. Yes. We have to tell both, right? If A is greater than B, so and so is maximum. If less than B, that means else. So and so. So should be maximum. So if A is less than B, so the else means it's a reverse of this. A is less than B. Then which one is the maximum? B. So, okay, now let's try and call this. So we are calling in the conditional test. Let's go there. And should we again instantiate the class, or we can use the same object for the second one?
The same object.
Same object.
Same object, yes. You can also instantiate, but that will create new copy. This means this is a new copy. So, but we don't want to create new copy unless until it's required, because the more the copies, more the space.
CD dot maximum. Yeah.
Yes. So CD dot maximum. So it's right there as in type you. When you type M, it will filter out. So I can choose from. And okay, let's numbers. Let's enter negative numbers this time, okay? Because integer can take negatives. And I will take negative 34. And let me run. So the maximum of minus 19 minus 34 is minus 19. Is it correct mathematically?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, obviously. Minus 19. Okay, if you're still doubtful, let's take a positive numbers also. Okay, now let's call it again. You can call as many times. That is the beauty of it, because the reusable function will let you call any number of times. Okay, so now let's take 0 and 1. So 0 and 1 is, out of which 1 is the maximum. Okay, one more time. So let's take the higher number first, 100, then lower number later, 79, 78. Okay, so that is also correct. Okay, so now let's little bit complicate this program. Okay, if I give you 3 numbers now and ask you to choose a minimum of it. Now 2 numbers is easier. If A is greater than A is less than B and else, that would be sufficient. Okay, now if I actually ask you to write if, else, if, and else using this conditional structure, and ask you to write another function to calculate minimum. Let's start with the minimum and then go to max. Minimum of 3 numbers. All right. Now the logic would be complicated, little bit complex than this. Okay, not very much, but little bit. So let's try that. Public void minimum. Okay, so now can we use the same function name, or should we change the name? It already minimum function is defined, right? So can I take minimum and pass 3 numbers? Is it okay? Because I want to find minimum of 3 numbers. Is it A, integer in integers. All right. So should we change the name or is it okay to keep the name? And what if we keep the name, what that concept is called? Yes,
Method overloading.
method overloading, correct, because the signature changes. Minimum signature is here void and 2 parameters, here void and 3 parameters. Okay, so this is called overloaded method of minimum, so which is acceptable. Okay, so now just for the change, I will just change these integers to, all right, double. Okay, so that we can also choose the minimum of fractional part. I mean 2.3 and 3.4 something. So let's choose double. So still it is method overloading because the type also you can change from integer to double. Okay. Okay, so now let's write the logic. Okay, so now tell me, how do you write the logic? And okay, one more change, simple. I want to return also. Okay, so that everything is covered. So let's return and print. Okay, so let's return. Okay, so as and when I type return, it will ask me to return. Okay, so it is just a temporary error, but as and when you write return statement, it will go off. So let's keep it. So error will be gone soon. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create integer minimum. Okay, so that I can return this later. Okay, so let's return it now. Okay, so that the error will be gone. Okay, so what happened? Minimum initialize, yes. So you have to initialize this value. So let's initialize and let's keep this as double because everything has to be double, otherwise it will throw error. And what is the default value of double when we initialize? 0, right? So automatically it will initialize with 0. Okay, so this, whenever you return something in a function, the first statement should be the return variables declaration and initialization, and the last statement should be return of that return variable. Okay, just remember this always. Even if you put try catch block, it has to be like this. So this has to be before and this has to be after every time. This return statement must be the last statement in any function that is returning something. Okay, okay, now whatever logic goes in between here, right here. Okay, now let's write the logic. So we want the minimum of 3 numbers. So let's try if a is less than b, correct? A is less than b, then what is the minimum? We have already seen. What is the minimum? A is less than b.
A.
A is minimum, but we don't know about the c, right? So let's write that too. If a is less than b, and if you want to combine two different conditional statements, you have to use ampersand. Okay, so this is the logical and. I think I have already told you in the beginning, first class. Logical operators, mathematical arithmetic operators, plus, minus, divided by, modulo operators, then logical operators, and or pipes, right? So if you look at the notes, first day notes, you will know. But just remember that right now, if you want to combine two different conditional statements, you must use the logical and. That's what it is for. Okay. So now if a is less than b, okay, so if condition will not have to be repeated, the conditions themselves must be repeated by separating this and. Okay, if a is less than b, now what about c? That's what I asked you before. If a is less than b and that means and a is less than c. All right, so now watch carefully. I am using the brackets carefully so that this inside bracket is for, okay, is for if, right? So this whole thing is if we started here and ended here, and inside I am putting two conditions. One is A is less than B, that's a condition. Okay. If A is less than C, that's another condition. I am combining these two simple conditions with the logical operator. Okay. That's how it has to be. Okay. Now what that means is if A is less than B and A is less than C, then what is the minimum? Obviously, if some number is less than the second number and the third number, obviously the minimum number is, what is it? If A is less than B, say that again.
A.
A is the minimum, because when you
Minimum.
say it, A is less than B, the minimum is A, and also A is less than C, the minimum is A. So when A is less than both B and C, obviously the minimum of A, B, and C is A. So you can print this out, right? So the minimum is, let's just type the minimum, because if we type whole thing, minimum is, I'll just type A. I'm not going to type minimum of A, comma B, comma C is A. Okay, so you can do this if you want. Okay, and I have to return that also. Return what? Return the minimum, because I'm going to return. Maybe I'm willing to use it in my further programming. Okay, and I'm also printing. So both ways it will work. So return minimum. So I had to type return, and if any point of time, if a condition has multiple statements, in this case, the if condition has only one statement, if followed by sysout, right? But if I have to do, if I have to write multiple, like 2 or more, then I must put a curly bracket again, because otherwise I cannot indicate that this it belongs to all of these statements. Okay, it will only treat the following statement as if condition statement. So now this will do. Okay, now minimum is now set to A. Okay, so now you have to understand this carefully. Now I am choosing comparing A and B and A and C, and I have determined that A is the minimum, right? Now since I am returning this, okay, so I have to return the minimum, and the minimum in this case is A. So I have to assign this A value to the minimum. So initial value of minimum is 0, right? Now when I assign minimum A value to the minimum, finally it will return that A here. Okay, when we call, it will return. So we will see at the time of calling. Okay, now that is the first if condition. Okay, now we have to see what if other. So I'll use else if. We haven't used else if here because there are only two numbers. Now the things are getting complex. Okay, now let's come from the B side. Okay, what if B is less than A and B is less than C, then what would happen? Okay, so else if, again I'm just putting the bracket very wide open so that you can understand, don't get confused. So first condition is B is less than A, and second condition is, say what, B is less than C. So I am fixing one number and comparing that number with other two numbers combinedly. Okay, so that's a technique. Okay, so else if this happens, we will print something to the console, the minimum, and we will also return that number. Okay, now sysout. So in this case, the minimum is
B.
yes, and what I have to set minimum value with equals to B. Okay, so observe carefully what I'm trying to do. I am printing and I'm also setting minimum because I have to return also, not just sysout, because when we are putting a void, the sysout would be sufficient, but in this case we have to actually return. The sysout is actually optional, but we are doing it anyway. So just remember that this is important, not this one. Okay, It's optional, but we are doing it. Okay, so we have covered A and we covered B. Now what else? Else is just else. I don't have to cover again else if C is less than A and C is less than B, right? That is obvious. After these two conditions are tested, the leftover condition is C is less than A and C is less than B. Okay, so that whole thing is covered in just else. Okay, so that's why I don't have to repeat that. Okay, so now as usual, we will print it. The minimum plus. So the minimum
See.
twice and set minimum to C. Okay. Okay, now it's testing time. We have created a function. Now we have to check whether the function is correct. We don't know yet. Okay. So now we can test this from conditional test. Okay, so now I'm going to access this by cd dot. Now let's see. Minimum. This function is there. Minimum. This function is. So these two are overloaded functions. So you have to choose carefully. This is the one we are interested in right now. Okay, I'm choosing this. Now it is asking you to enter 3 double numbers. So tell me any double numbers.
2.5
2.5
and 2.4, 2.3.
Okay, 2 point, very close numbers. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so what do you think the answer would be? What the output is? Obviously, you know. Tell me the answer. We will verify it. The expected answer.
2.3.
2.3 is the minimum. So that is the expected. Now we will run it, see the actual and see both are equal or not. So the minimum is 2.3. So that means the function we have written is working fine. That means that is correct. So you can check with more numbers also. Doesn't matter. Okay, so now let's write the counterpart of it. What is it? The maximum of 3 numbers. Okay, and little bit to debugging also for that. I show debugging. So since it's the same thing, I don't want to again rewrite it. That's why I copy pasted, which is acceptable. You can do that too. So wherever there is a minimum, I'll just replace it by maximum. So let's keep the doubles and just change minimum to maximum. Okay, so I'll just copy this. Okay, so now you tell me, is everything is fine or something need to be changed further?
In the
I mean, is
condition
it
A greater than B, A greater than C.
correct? Good job. So that's what I missed intentionally and you caught it. Okay. So we changed everything. Every wording is changed from minimum to maximum, but the condition itself is not changed. So in this case, A is greater than B and A is greater than C, then the maximum is A, then B is greater than A, greater than A, and B is greater than C, then the maximum is B, and else part would be automatically C is greater than A and C is greater than B. Obviously, the maximum would be C, and the maximum is obviously set to C. Okay, now let's quickly test this. Okay, there is an error. Okay, now the minimum variable does not exist in this function, obviously, because of the copy. These are called copy paste errors. The maximum is the local variable, right? So the minimum, we forgot to change it. So now I will change. Okay. So now let's test this, but I will test this in a different way. So let's first call this maximum. Okay, now let's pass 3 numbers. So tell me any 3 numbers.
27.1.
7.1.
20. Okay. Okay. And 4.5. 2.
You can take the
And
negative numbers also.
okay, minus 2.2.
Minus 2.2. Okay, so obviously when I run, it will show the maximum,
Yeah,
which is 7.1, but I'll show you in a different way, right? Okay, so now if I want to debug this, there is a concept called breakpoint. Okay, so I can just see right here where my cursor
are
is.
you finding the minimum or maximum? We CV
Oh,
dot.
sorry, maximum.
Yeah.
Okay, good job. Okay, so when we actually typed cd dot m, so I chose accidentally make minimum, right? So maximum is right here. So you're right, maximum. Okay. So now let's try to debug this properly. Okay. So if you see my cursor on this blue bar, this blue vertical bar, if I double click, it will insert a dot like thing which is called a breakpoint. Okay. So what this means is when I run this conditional test, it will run from starting point of main from here to the dot and stop or pause or halt. Okay, it won't further execute it, so that I can take a look step by step what's going on inside the programming. Okay, so that is the process called debugging. Okay, so the process is called debugging because it's a process of finding out the bugs in your program. Okay, so now instead of run, if you're debugging, you have to debug actually. So the symbol is right beside this. The play button indicates run. The bug button indicates debug. So you can see right here. All right. So I'm going to choose this. Or if you are actually right clicking also, it is right beneath it. Okay. Run as, and don't choose run as when you're debugging, debug as. Java application, same thing. So let's try this. Okay, so as and when you try to debug a program, the perspective, this is called perspective. The perspective is changed from Java to debug. That means perspective is like look and feel. So you immediately you see the difference, right? There is a debug window, there is a variables window, there is a breakpoints, there is a console. Okay, so it changed accordingly. So now there are three options. So it just actually stopped right there. It actually executed till that point. Minimum is 2.3. That was the last function we wrote, right? Minimum of 3 numbers. Then the function that we have written later is the maximum of 3 numbers, which is not yet executed. That means it is halted there. So right now I have 3 options. One is step into, okay, and one is step over. Okay, other is step return. The step into will actually go inside the function, and the step over will actually go over the function. That means it will go over. It will run the whole function immediately. It will not go step by step. So let's do the step into. Okay. Now I'm stepping into. Okay. So here we have entered the 3 variables, remember. So for A we have entered 7.1, we have passed. For B we have passed 4.2, and for C we have passed minus 2.2, if you remember. Okay, so now I want to go step over. I want to go step by step how it goes on. Okay, so now it reached the maximum. I cannot show you the code here. The code you have written, you can also see. Okay, that's fine. So if you remember, the function has 4 variables, A, B, C, and a maximum. Okay, so initialized with 0. That means 0.0. Double value is 0.0. Okay, so these are the initial values. The 4 values, A, B, C, and a maximum, which is a local variable, right? Now I will step over again. Step over means I am going step by step. Okay, so first condition will be checked if okay. So automatically it went to the A is greater than B and A is greater than C. Fortunately, the first condition itself is satisfied because A is greater than, right? A is greater than B. 7.1 is greater than 4.2. Okay, satisfied. And A is greater than C. 7.1 is greater than minus 2.2. Satisfied. So if A is greater than B and A is greater than C, the maximum is A, 7.1. So satisfied in the first condition itself. So it will come out. Okay, so the execution is over and finally it printed the output. Maximum is 7.1. Okay, so that's the process of debugging. And if in any case you want to just debug the rest of the program, just like you run it, just press it. So now you can come back. This is just last one is just something. Okay, so now let's take out this debug point because we have debugged successfully. So in case you put something illogical here, that means you have written some program with a logical error or something, then you can easily catch it during the debug. So if everything is fine, then you can take up the debug point. Okay, so just double click it, just click on it, it will go off. So it's a toggle. So now I want to just run it as usual. So you can run it and see the output. So 7.1 is the maximum, which is correct. Okay. So any doubts still here? We have used conditional statements using if, else, if, and else. Any doubts? Okay.
One more time, please.
You want to run this program, or you want me to explain?
Just a little bit explain.
Okay. Okay, so let's take a different example instead of explaining the same example all over again, because others will get bored. So I'll take a different example. Okay, so in this case, I will write a program that will determine both minimum and maximum at the same time. Okay, so let's call the program function name as this. Write a method or function calculate both minimum and maximum of, let's take two numbers only. Okay, so you can try with three numbers because you can just if you got the logic already, you can easily write it. It's not a big deal. So let's take the simplicity because it could be same thing. Public. So in this case, I just want printed. Okay, so we are not doing much with the return statement. The main purpose of return statement is this is returning something, right? So if I am actually returning it, then that means I should be storing it in a double variable. So double in something like this. Okay, this is the actual purpose of returning. Otherwise, the sysout would do. That's what the sysout is printing here. And what is the purpose of storing this return value in another variable in the test? Because I can do something about it. I can further use it. Like for example, using this minimum, I can do further programming, whatever the programming is. Okay, so that is the way. Otherwise, this minimum is, if this minimum is not useful, then you don't have to return this. You can just put a void. Okay, so just for the sake of writing this minimum maximum function, I'll put void and call this min max. Okay, so and like as usual, I will write the two arguments and you can enhance it with 3 or 4. It's up to you. Okay, so let's take double x double y. So now you got the point, right? Now not only you have to choose the maximum, but also you have to choose the minimum at the same time. And sysout, I'm print to the console both. Okay, so how do you write it? If A is greater than B, Oh, sorry. X is greater than Y. So the variables do not matter. Okay, whatever variables you use, you have to use the same variables, otherwise it would throw error. Okay, so if X is greater than Y, what is the maximum? What is the minimum? The max is, or min is,
Why?
Y. And you can put another sys out, or you can cover it in a same sys out, doesn't matter. So the max is so I'll just role reverse it. Okay, that means else. So else part would simply, okay, I have to close this bracket because I opened it here, and else part would contain the same thing. So I'll just copy over. So in this case, the max will become min, and min will become max. Okay. So okay, so now let's see something wrong with this curly brackets. So always remember, so whatever you open, you must close. So everything is open and closed right here. So let's see if there is anything extra. Okay, so maybe this is extra. So everything is right now. Okay, so now cd dot min max. Okay, what happened? This is a commonly made mistake. Okay, so the function I have written is not, is it coming here? Yes. Okay, I thought it didn't save it. Okay, so now tell me any numbers.
10.
Okay, so let's take one integer and one double number. Okay, so that we will see if it still works or not. Okay, so the reason is the min max actually takes both double, right? But I have entered one integer and one double. Does it work? It should, because it's a lower number. Double is higher than integer, so double in place of double you can also pass a lower type, which is integer. But it's not true for the other way around. If the function is accepting integer, and if you're actually passing double, it wouldn't accept it, because it is a higher. Integer is a lower, double is a higher, right? So in hierarchy, that's in the last session or last couple of sessions back, I told you the short byte takes, what is the range of byte and what is the range of integer, correct? So in that hierarchy, the double is more. So in place of double, you can also pass integer like this, but not the other way around. So that's why there is no error right here. Otherwise, you would get an error. Okay. Now let's try and run this. Okay. The maximum is 45.65, and it is treating 10 as 10.0 because the double equivalent of 10 is 10.0 simply. So no problem. Entering wise, you can enter 10 or 10.0. It will still be acceptable. But in the output, it will always convert it to double. Okay. So because double compared to double, okay, it's always 10 converted to double is 10.0. So let's try this again. 10.0, same thing. Okay, so is this clear, the concept of if, else, and else if?
Yes.
Okay,